Mr. Jacoby,
Yes.
Mr. Tabletop,
Yes.
do you have a lesson for us today? Do you have something
Of course.
that you could just like a little quick little tidbit that you could give us that's just going to enrich our games and just make life at the table so much better?
I sure do.
What do you have for us today?
So, okay, a lot of times, whether you're new to this game or maybe you've been playing for a long time, it can be very easy to fall into the trap of creating what I guess you could call a problem character. So I have a few tips on things that you can do to, to include in the character building process, a couple of things to avoid in that process, and that's going to be able to make sure that whatever character you put together is pretty much guaranteed to succeed and fit in with whatever party you're going to have. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with backgrounds, which is actually going to be the video that J&J Tabletop is going to release this week. A little extra in-depth look at backgrounds and why they're so important. But the biggest things I think you need to answer when you're putting together your background for your characters is just answer these two questions. How did you become the class that you chose? Like, why are you that class? And then why are you an adventurer, or why will you go on an adventure? If you can answer those two questions, the rest of it kind of can just fall into line, and you'll be just fine as far as like background information. And then also, I would recommend having a thing or two that is precious to your character. It is okay to have a family, even if some point later down the line the DM uses them to manipulate you, because this is a storytelling game and we like to tell stories, and I just think the orphan who has nothing to them and has nothing to lose, I don't know, sometimes if the stakes don't matter, then neither does the story.
But also, DMs out there, just because someone has something that's precious to them doesn't mean you have the right to take it away from them every single time. Because people like you are probably the reason why so many players are just that orphan that has nothing that they care about aside from just the thrill of adventure.
Yep.
So you need to have some trust and respect both ways.
And that's not to say that some of these rules can't be bent or even broken outright. These are just guidelines that are going to make sure that the character you put together will work. And then also, I like to just add a quirk of some kind, just because that's fun. People have quirks. People do weird things. A few things to avoid. I think it's good to avoid lone wolf syndrome. It's very, very common to be the war orphan who doesn't trust anybody and they do things on their own. And if you want to lean into that a little bit, maybe that's okay, but don't go so hard that you're like, I'm not going to go on this adventure because I don't work with people. At the end of the day, it's a game, and the DM put together an adventure for everybody to go on. So it's important to, when you use the phrase, I'm just role-playing my character, you should use that to explain actions, not justify actions. So if you're wondering what the difference is on that, just like, Obi-Wan says, perhaps you should go home and rethink your life. I don't know. Anyways, things to avoid. Being a jerk, or at least playing one. I think that's probably something you should avoid. I mean, all evil campaigns can be a lot of fun, but everybody has to be on board with that idea before that's going to work. Depending on the tone that's set at your table, you really got to make sure that that's okay. And like I said before, I would avoid a character that doesn't have any flaws, because it is a storytelling game and life isn't perfect, people aren't perfect, and that's what makes a story intriguing. Some final thoughts. This is one that Josh said. The most interesting thing that has happened to your character probably should not have happened yet. That's what the adventure is supposed to be. I mean, maybe if you're playing a level 20 character, that could be different, but odds are you're playing a character that's either level 1 to 3 when you're starting off, and it should only get more interesting from there. The other thing is that whatever adventure hook that the DM does present to you, make sure you bite that hook and go on that adventure. And then when in doubt, ask your DM if you have a question, if your idea or concept for your character will work or not for the game that they've put together. And that's kind of all that I have. But I'm also not the only person here. We have lovely human beings. I'm just going to assume you're all human beings. Nope, Evan's not. Yes. Okay. Okay. So, based on those things that we just said, is there any other tips or tricks or things you think about when you make a character that you feel like you're pretty sure that that's going to fit into whatever game you're going to? So I'm going to throw it to Michael first and see what he thinks.
The first thing that I would probably say is that you don't have to have everything in your character figured out. You know, that's something that you're going to grow into and that you'll learn as you play the character. You'll feel what they should do or say just by playing them. And if you try to like, I with my first character, I was so worried because I was just like, you know, oh, do I need to have all this stuff memorized and figured out? Like, what if I don't remember this or something of that nature? It's like, it's more about feeling the character and just getting into the character than it is memorizing or having everything written out. Like, not that you can't have a detailed backstory, but that if you don't have everything fleshed out with it, you're gonna grow as you play.
It's perfect. You know, even just in this example for our game, like I had the story of how Vale left the glass blades, but I didn't really flesh out any details of that until Josh talked about Baron's Eve, and I was like, oh, let me think about that a little more. So it could be like a process. It doesn't have to be like you just said. It's very good. All right, Evan, do you have anything that you would like to share?
You and Michael both kind of stole my thing, which was that you don't have to have everything figured out and to talk to the DM. So yeah, I mean, I would just reiterate that like my character Echo is more fleshed out than probably any other character I've ever had, and that's because I worked with you guys on building the character, and it was a lot of tables, which, let's say that's another one. If you want like ways to build out a good character, use tables. There's lots of good content on jnjtabletop's YouTube channel about using tables and how great they are.
It's a great intro on that one too.
I mean, you know, it's pretty dope. But yeah, that's really all I have. Just reiterating what you guys already said. You nailed it.
Awesome. All right, Izzy. Here it is. Your moment is here.
Could you repeat the question, please?
So what kind of tips or any thoughts on just the character building process and making a character that you're really confident is going to fit in at the table, so you're not like wasting your time putting something together?
So I mean, the thing that I want to say, I don't know if it necessarily will always apply, but I think making a character that's someone that you can relate to, or someone that like a feeling or emotion that you wanted to be able to play out, because chances are you're playing with friends that you know, so you know their character. So I don't know. It's a fantasy roleplay game, so getting to explore other parts of yourself through the game.
I think that's great. At the core of that, make sure you pick something that's fun.
Yes.
Right? That's like at the core of what you were saying.
Yep.
And then I'll just throw it back to you, Josh, whether you want to add to that or move on.
Sure. I mean, you mentioned backgrounds right at the beginning, right? I said lean into that and combine that with what Evan said, and also another point that you made is when you have a background that should be important. Talk to the DM about how you could make that important and how you could really let that background tie you into the setting. Like, okay, I don't know, maybe you have like the soldier background. Okay, what sort of military could I have been a part of? Was it like a mercenary group? Like, how would that make sense? How could we tie that in? And why am I not a part of that anymore? That's going to help you feel connected to the world, and that's going to help your DM give you adventure hooks, and also throw in just little Easter eggs and stuff from your background. And for me, I get excited when that kind of stuff pops back up, and I get to just, suddenly this thing that, like I said in my background on session 0, and I haven't had to think about since then. Like, you know, I rolled that I had an ally or someone I fought alongside, and now suddenly I'm face to face with that person, face to face with a rival from my background or something like that. Work with your DM in a session 0 or after the session 0 or whatever. Talk to your DM about how you could get your character connected to the story, or really just the world. And that's just going to make everything a lot more fun.
Awesome. I love
And your
it.
DM's going to want to do that.
Yes.
If you want to get more invested in this in the world that your DM is creating, they're going to be excited about that. And if they're not excited about that, they probably shouldn't be DMing.
There it is.